Good morning, everybody. Greg Spiro here on this beautiful morning here in Los Angeles for me, wherever you are for you. We have a really cool show today. Four industry leaders in different factions of the music industry are joining us to discuss what artists can do during this time of COVID-19 and how the music world has been affected, what we can look forward to, and some other fun tidbits and hopefully some resources of things that can help in the meantime. We've been getting these panels together and trying to ideate the future together, because now that the touring landscape has been flattened, there's a lot to rebuild and there are new technologies to utilize. So hopefully this will help a little bit. I'm gonna go get my mushroom cocoa real quick before I begin this. So I'll be back in like 2 minutes, and in the meantime, you can listen to a tune called The Chant, which is off an upcoming record of mine called The Chicago Experiment on Rope-A-Dope Records. We have Lewis from Rope-A-Dope here. And this is featuring also Makai McCraven, who will also be joining us. So hope you enjoy. I'll be back in just a couple minutes. I love you guys. This is great. Who did he really hold his mug like that? How did I hold my mug? That was so weird. Was it like this? Yeah. I don't know. I have some fun mugs. If you look at the mugs that I'm using during this show, I always hand select them in a specific way. We have Nights in India with Greg. All right, we've got an international crowd today. So I'm really excited for the conversation today, and I'm going to bring them in just a second. We have 4 industry leaders who I will introduce when I bring them on Zoom in just a second here. And we're going to talk about what is happening in the music world and what we have to look forward to in the future, and what we can do right now as artists, because shit's crazy. But, quarantine restrictions are lifting a little bit. I don't know. I actually I'm not too optimistic about that side of things, but let's see what they think, what the other guys think. I'm going to log on to Zoom here, start this meeting. It looks like they're all in here. I'm going to join with my computer audio. This is what happens when you run a show yourself. And now I'm going to our guest panel. Oop. And just have to real quickly pull up their screen. You can hear them. And Zoom. Boom. There we are. There's Bryce. What's up?
What's up, Greg?
So we have Bryce,
right.
Bryce Rosenblum, founder of Winter Jazz Fest in New York. One of the coolest things to ever happen in the history of humankind, in my opinion.
Thanks, buddy.
We have Louis Marks from Rope-A-Dope Records, the label that I am signed to, who has, how many artists do you have on your label? Is like 70 or some crazy number?
Well, we don't sign artists, we sign records, right? So we've released over 550 records in 20 years.
Yeah.
Probably 400 of those in the last 5 years.
Yeah, they're supporting tons of artists, and Louis is thinking he's very forward thinking in this landscape of artists trying to figure out what to do during this period. So I'm super happy to have him on here to discuss with us. We have Mike Bindraban from Good Music Company, who has set up many a tour that I have been on. He does touring all through Europe and outside of Europe. I know it's broken into Asia, and is a powerhouse in the touring world. So I'm really excited to discuss with these forces, and also Makai McCraven, who will be joining us shortly, to look at the landscape for artists and for the future of the music industry, and thinking about what we can do now. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing while we've been in quarantine, because I know there have been some fun things to do, actually. Yesterday I saw Herbie on the live stream, and I watched a Wayne Shorter live stream, which was not only entertaining but informative and inspiring. But you guys, what have you guys been doing with your time during this time? Have you been checking out any media that people have been doing, any live streams and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a lot of activity yesterday, as you said. It was International Jazz Day. The Herbie stream was beautiful. It's amazing. Of course, that was supposed to be in South Africa, in Cape Town. Of course, they were able to pull it off in a really incredible way. What else? This weekend is weekend 2 of what would have been New Orleans Jazz Fest. WWOZ Radio is streaming basically hits or some of the best of. They have a whole schedule for each day this weekend. If you go to wwoz.org, they're calling it Festing in Place. So a lot of tremendous performances from their catalog, the catalog of New Orleans Jazz Fest. And then a lot of artists, of course. The Jazz Gallery has a wonderful series. I think it's $10 for members or $20 separately. Actually, and then Mike, you hipped me to a couple things. The Norwegians, I guess, if you want to talk about that, what they're doing.
Yeah, well, in Oslo, there's a big venue called Centralen, where the creme de la creme of the Norwegian jazz scene, but also the emerging jazz scene in Norway, comes together for concerts, which they stream in very high definition audio and video. That's on Facebook Live. I know there's a bunch of initiatives coming from the UK in London, of smaller pockets of venues and clubs doing some live streaming stuff. What I really like to follow is this thing on Instagram called the Homies, which is this collective of all these club DJs that also do a lot of funk, club, dance, jazz, whatever. And they all live stream from their homes across Europe, mostly Switzerland and France. It's very cool. It's very nice to discover new stuff through that. But overall, there's a lot of initiatives going on the online side, and that's good to see. Also, International Jazz Day. There was a big jazz auditoria live stream coming from Tokyo in Japan, where a lot of beautiful jazz musicians participated on. Was checking that out, and I don't know. I've been diving into the Bimhuis TV archives lately online. You can check that out on YouTube, just Bimhuis TV, and just watching a whole bunch of concerts they already recorded from there. Yeah, yeah.
Hey Mike,
It's good.
I actually am gonna pause this for 1 second because the all of my audience is happily watching right now, but Facebook has decided to glitch out the entire cross-posting aspect of the live stream that we're doing, and I know how to fix it, but I have to restart the stream to do it. So if you guys want to just hold tight for one moment, I'm gonna pull this back up. Perfect. That is
Let's go, girl.
yeah, exactly. That's me on my live show every day. But so yeah, just hold up for 1 second. I'll be right back, and these guys will be right back with me. For everybody watching on my channels, just tune back in a second, and we'll have it live to the world in just a moment. Oh my gosh. All right. Woo! We are live, everybody. This is Mornings with Greg, with me, Greg Spiro. We had a few technical difficulties there. Facebook loves to throw you for a loop last minute every once in a while. But we're live to all the channels now. As you can see, there have been many beautiful comments from my fans who are watching when I was thinking I was live streaming to all of the appropriate pages, but was actually only live streaming to the Greg Spiro fan page. So thank you for bearing with us and joining us. We have an incredible panel today of people who are forces in the music industry. I'm gonna just pull up this Zoom meeting right now and introduce them, as I also give you a little bit of some nice background music here. Yeah, see, that eases the tension. Now we're gonna start the Zoom meeting. And it looks like we have them all here. Ooh, there might be a little surprise over there. So, you guys. Wait, Bryce, put that back on to get that. They didn't actually. They saw as you were taking it off that this is Bryce Rosenblum, everybody. Encouraging you to vote. Oh, there's Mike Bindraban. Yep, with the traditional clown mask that he always wears whenever I see him. And we also have Louis Marks over there.
It's a social distancing mask. It keeps people away.
Exactly. Works really well in supermarkets. Yeah.
You know, I actually always wondered that about social distancing. When we say social distancing, the word should be physical distancing, right? It's not.
Yes.
So like, we're actually trying to be socially close to each other. And so social distancing, it's like you're trying to get people away from you. I'm trying to.
Selective process, Greg.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Select the people with whom you socially distance. Yeah, but I think we're all good now on these cross posts. Sorry about the little blip earlier. Yep, it's live on Mike. It's live on your page. It's live on Jazz Times. It's live on Winter Jazz Fest, Rope-A-Dope Music. So yeah, we are solid. And I just want to. I know I said their names, but I want to tell you a tiny bit about the people that you are watching right now. And by the way, this is a fun and casual live stream. I do this every morning, and we have all sorts of technical adventures as far as getting it working, because I'm a pianist and not really a tech guy, though I'm kind of like maybe 30% a tech guy. Anyway, today we have Bryce Rosenblum, the founder of Winter Jazz Fest, one of the premier jazz festivals in the world, and one of the coolest things to happen in my lifetime as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Greg. Awesome.
And Bryce is also working on some really cool projects in the music space to help musicians. And to, hey Mike, you shared the stream. See, that's also a cool thing about this. When you share the stream, it shows you in the middle of the stream there with a little like fun GIF icon saying that you shared the stream. That goes for anybody who shares the stream.
Okay.
Technology, man.
Wow.
But yeah, Bryce is working on some really cool things, including the Jazz Coalition, which is he's going to talk about that in a little bit. We have Mike Bindraban from Good Music Company. I've done many a tour with Good Music Company, as I've been with Mackay McCraven and his band for many years now. God, when did you start with Mackay? That was like 4 years ago, something like that.
I think it's 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a funny story on how it all started. But I'd actually like Mackay to be in the conversation. So
Okay,
let's say that.
Great, great. Well, yeah. When he pops in here, we can give that story. But yeah, Mike is a touring force for Europe and beyond. And then we have Louis Marks from Rope-A-Dope Records, which is the record label that I am happily signed to. Louis is a very forward-thinking figure in music right now. We've had countless conversations about blockchain technologies, live streaming, monetization of artists' brands, and figuring out how artists can do the best possible thing in this period where we're kind of all scrambling and figuring out what to do. So Louis, thank you so much for being here with us. Mike, Bryce, thank you guys so much for being here.
Yes, thank you, Greg.
Pleasure always.
So we before the live stream was so abruptly cut off before, we were talking a little bit about what we're doing during this time. We had mentioned some of the live streams that we've been watching. There have been actually some really cool ones on. I watched the Herbie one with Wayne Shorter, who I've drawn so much inspiration from them over the years. Not only their recordings, but their outlook on life and
Pleasure always. So.
Oh, okay, that was just somebody watching the stream. Pardon the little feedback issues. But yeah, what have you guys been getting into now that you've this is week 4 or 5 of mandated quarantine?
Yeah, actually, I just realized that it's Friday, so Friday mornings, Brandy Younger and Desron Douglas are doing their duet from their apartment.
Nice.
I just saw that's one of our competing streams right now.
Are they doing it like right now? I thought it was a little later. Oh, because it's Eastern time.
Yeah, I think it is now.
Fucking
Yep.
time zones.
Another morning pleasure has been Stuart Bogey, solo clarinet from his apartment, which has been really beautiful way to wake up in the morning. And then, of course, right now, I'm dreaming about being in New Orleans for New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. And fortunately, WWOZ Radio, if you go to wwoz.org, are presenting the whole weekend, and they did it last weekend too, Festing in Place. So it's some of the highlights of past New Orleans Jazz Fests. They have an entire schedule with all the different stages and different channels you can go and check out.
How cool. Yeah, it makes me so happy that organizations like New Orleans Jazz Fest are not just saying like we can't do anything right now, and that they're aggregating people to come on and do live streams. And it's not, it's not the ideal. Obviously, we want to be together, but it's something that is helping us in the meantime to stick together as a community, and realize that nothing can actually stop us as a jazz community. We'll push forward in one way or another.
Indeed.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? What have you been getting into?
Well, honestly, a lot's been going on over here with the summer being canceled, basically. So for us as a booking agency and as artist managers, it's you need to anticipate and start working on moving all your shows you have set up. So we're moving a lot of shows now to 2021, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Within our small little bubble of colleagues and everything, everybody's kind of slightly pessimistic about the fall, even though there's some good news stuff going on. I mean, Spain is opening up very slowly starting May. They have this phased out strategy in which they're going to open up for live events and live concerts very slowly. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, from a lot of colleagues, promoters, agents, and musicians also, it's not an economically viable model for international touring, at least. It's more or less for national artists. So let's just say venues of around 200 cap are going to open for 40 people. Mm. And then from, let's say, June 1, 1,000 venue caps can open up to 150 to 200 people. But then again, looking at the economy on how venues work and how they, try to stay alive, try to have their business model. Venue expenses are just going through the roof, so it's almost impossible just to have like 1,000 cap venue and only sell 100 to 200 tickets. Mm-hmm. So that's something that everybody's kind of anticipating, and there's a lot of discussion right now on what we're going to do with the fall. So that's been keeping me busy. And at night,
I just want to ask a couple questions about that. So they came out with specific guidelines on capacities already and dates?
Yes, they did.
I mean, it's helpful. It's harrowing, of course, but it's helpful to at least know what the numbers are to start determining what types of solutions are possible. For us in New York, we have no idea what the actual restrictions or the timeline is going to be.
Well, let me just grab that here for you. Just give me a sec, and let me just see if I can get those numbers for you very quickly, Bryce. But the same thing is happening not only in Spain, but also Denmark is slowly opening up for venues. Sweden has been open always already, but just for also very smaller crowds. But I think the essence is, or the problem is very much going to be not only is it an economic viable business model, but also like for international touring artists, are there any travel restrictions? There are right now. It's very difficult to travel now from country to country, even though it's the European Union. Things have been very restricted. But just give me a sec. Let me just pop up those numbers, and I'll get back to you because it's needed.
Cool.
Yeah, I
Well,
think-
yeah, I mean, I imagine we're going to have to all think creatively. How do we utilize what's possible with physical bodies, physical numbers, but with maybe some sort of live stream component to a large audience. Mike, it may have been you, or it may have been Reza from Quest TV, who was telling me that Ronnie Scott was doing some streams, but geo restricting it, so you could only view it if you're in London or in England, which is an interesting model to think about. It's kind of like blackout football games.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're trying to explore what the future might be for Winter Jazz Fest, of course, in January. And a few weeks ago we thought, oh, by January it should be fine. We ideally be able to go back to normal. But as the weeks progressed, of course, we realized, no, this is something we're going to have to really think about deeply. And we're considering what a hybrid model might look like, depending on what venues we're able to go into, what those capacity numbers look like. The question is, do we offer a premium ticket, to get access to those limited number of people who can, that we're able to accommodate, and then have a augmented experience online, with virtual performances. And with that virtual performance model, we could potentially have stages anywhere, not necessarily just in New York. So we're exploring all sorts of different models.
Sorry, go on.
Just to get back to you, Bryce, the latest news on live music for Spain is that May 11 cultural events will be allowed to resume for a maximum capacity of 30 people. For indoor venues, usually having a capacity of 90 or more, and 200 for open air events, but all these events must be seated, and there must be a social distancing or physical distancing rule applied of at least 1.5 meters to 2 meters.
So no GA venues, essentially.
No.
Indoor or outdoor.
No. So that's the first part, and then that's the first phase, and then the second phase is May 25, and then indoor concerts will reopen at a third of their usual capacity, with a maximum capacity of 50 people, and then open air up to 400, again with physical distance and seated. Everything needs to be seated. And also in this phase, cinemas and theaters will be allowed to open for a third of their capacity. And then June 8, reopening of nightclubs, bars, etc., with a capacity limit of 80, a third of normal size, and outdoor events up to 800 seated with social distancing.
How do you enforce social distancing in a club or a bar? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, how do you get a live experience, the electricity and the emotion with social distancing? It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, but at least then there is a physical presence to give and take from the performer and the audience. And even if you're watching a stream, and there's that audience presence in the room, and you can see that give and take from the artist, that's at least better than what we're seeing, where it's right now, where it's just the more two-dimensional experience of the artist on the screen performing without the participation of the audience, without the claps, without that response.
Well, my big question is here, and this is why it's really valuable to have people like you guys on here. How is that economic model even? How is that going to have a fraction of viability when your audience is cut down by At the what was the Bryce? I was checking, or Mike rather. I was checking some comments when you were saying that last part of the timeline. June. Were you saying June this year or June next year?
No, this year.
This year. Okay, so they'll be opening it up June this year, but it'll still be slashed in by a major percentage as far as the people that you'll be able to have inside of a venue, and then
Yep.
so the major,
For example, the Jazzaldia San Sebastian Jazz Festival, which is going to be held in July, basically canceled their complete international program, and they're only focusing on Spanish artists or artists that are from the region that are able to travel to Spain. And their concert model is going to be totally different. So they're going to do mostly outdoor concerts with the social distancing, and then up to the maximum what is allowed. And the program is going to change. You see something similar in Denmark happening right now. Probably in other countries it will follow. The Czech Republic is also going to implement a similar Spanish standard. But for the clubs itself, what I'm getting from my colleagues, at least, is that it's just impossible to do economically. So the only way to do it is to have local musicians come and play, and at least keep up something of live music. But having what we used to know of international touring artists, or that's still pretty far away. For us as an agency, as Good Music Company, we're not booking any new shows for the fall. We're actually already in April 21.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm curious about that. Yes, of course, tours are complicated and difficult. I'm wondering though, is it? Do you foresee it being restrictions, from the countries not allowing travel, specifically from maybe the United States or from New York artists? I'm just wondering what the understanding of that kind of restriction, specific restriction, looks like.
Well, it's already kind of diffuse and very unclear, because actually there's a travel ban going to and from the States. There are still here and there flights coming in and out of the States. Up to a couple of weeks ago, there weren't even any checks or temperature checks or health checks at airports. So, passengers were not checked. And, for example, here in Holland, the borders are not closed. So you are allowed to fly in, and there are no strict quarantine rules for, let's say, Americans coming into Holland, and that they have to quarantine. There is a rule, though, and which is more or less, courtesy, that when you come in from abroad, you should go into quarantine for at least a week.
Do you find people respecting that?
It's not really enforced, no. I mean, I don't know. There hasn't been any travel coming in from the States for quite a while now. But it's vague, and the question bears the question if those measures for, let's say, Americans traveling into Europe, be it coming to London, Holland, Amsterdam, Paris, France, or Sweden, or maybe even outside the EU, for say Switzerland or other countries. I mean, it's not going to be like an EU-wide thing. I mean, people are pushing for that, for like generic EU regulations on travel coming in or outside the European Union, so coming from the UK or from the States. But it's going to be more or less country by country approach, because all the countries are suffering from this coronavirus differently, and are implementing regulations, restrictions, but also loosening the regulations separately.
Yeah, that's one of the big. That's one of the
makes
biggest.
it all complicated, yeah.
It's one of the biggest centerpieces of the question here, right? How much do you restrict people's freedoms to do the things that they can do in their own rights, like travel from one country to another, at the cost of potentially making the problem worse for everybody, because it's a collective problem, and that's why there's the push and pull in the U.S. It's a huge push and pull. People that disagree terribly on how much you should actually restrict people, and even to the point where you're seeing some riots. I think there was an incident yesterday I heard where like some in Michigan there was a really bad incident yesterday at one of the protests. So it's getting bad in terms of people disagreeing about how we deal with this, and it's one of the things I want to think about. But at the same time, in our microcosm of the music industry, and this is I want to speak to Louis about this a little bit, because I know, Louis, you have a limited amount of time with us. There are things that we can do as artists in terms of recording. Micaiah McCraven, who's joining us now, had some thoughts on this in a conversation we just had yesterday. But Louis, as the owner of a record label, what are you seeing artists doing to try to prepare for the future during this time? What are you thinking about?
So it's interesting. I mean, I learned a lot listening to Mike and Bryce about, you get to see see the industry from their view. What my takeaway from that is, and it's similar here, is we really don't know what the future looks like, and so we get whatever data we can. But I think the brain tries to say, how do we get back to where we were? And so I'm taking things a day at a time and saying, well, I don't know that back to where we were is ever going to happen, as they've mentioned, or maybe not for a long time. So what are the creative ways that we can build a different kind of future? And again, it's a step at a time. I don't know what it's going to look like in 6 months or a year. But at present, I'm focused on, and I learned something new in the last time I was on, Greg, just there's the financial damage that musicians are sustaining right now, right? Loss of income from touring. So we were focused on that, but there's an emotional component to it as well, is not being able to connect with fans and get that feedback that they so much live for. I don't want to speak for all of them, but that was brought up by Scotty, I think. So a day at a time, trying to address immediate financial needs, and also I guess communing and talking to people and continuing the conversation so that people know that they're not alone in this. And then looking forward to different models. We at Rope It Up are trying to coach everybody. You've been very helpful, teach everybody how to communicate with an audience without actually being in front of the audience. Mm-hmm. With what you're doing right now, everyone can do. There's been regular meetings. People have come up with some fascinating suggestions, from synchronizing music with other forms of art is easier to do than for a band to play in 5 different places at the same time, and synchronizing that over broadband. So there's talk about education and developing curriculum and getting people, artists to teach with pre-recorded or live sessions, getting that into schools. So that, we're just taking it a day at a time and working on the balance between all the emotional factor, the financial factor, and the creative factor. What can be done in the future? And I really do think that the feeling of loss is that, we lost everything that we had, right? But new and creative ideas, I have a lot of faith in, not just the artists, but also some of the people that you've had on the show that are here now and have been on previously, to creatively, come up with a new thing. And I think that thing's going to be pretty freaking exciting when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's.
What do you think about Patreon then, Louis? Speaking about fan or artist to fan engagement.
I like Patreon. I mean, it has its limitations, but you know what? I love Bandcamp, and I always felt it had limitations in the beginning, right? It could become, and it's already done well for other types of creators. I think they've paid out $1 billion in the history so far. I think it's essential that people are able to charge money online. I'm not just frustrated with the low rate of streaming, which is virtually free, but I'm also frustrated with people giving away art and giving away their time online for nothing, for free, which is basically a model that Mark Zuckerberg talked everybody into, right? It worked for a while, but now people need to charge. So the two components are how to charge and get the audience to pay, but also how to increase the quality of what you present online. And that's
Facebook
what
just announced yesterday that they're going to start allowing people to charge for streams.
Which platform?
Facebook. Zuckerberg.
Facebook. Of course.
Well, they should be paying for the content that's created, not having us have to bust online. You know, I think that's the problem. And I think right now we have a very unique opportunity, you know, to reevaluate a lot of the ills of the music industry. You know, for the longest, everybody's told me that it's impossible to make a living making records or make any money. And so the only way for the artist to make money is to perform live. And that's not always been the case. And I don't think it has to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an appeal or a campaign from a Music Workers Alliance that's going out basically asking all the streaming services or demanding all the streaming services pay appropriate rates. You know, considering that touring, you know, unfortunately has become the primary revenue stream for a majority of touring musicians. And now that that's not happening, we're, you know, backed into the situation where artists are, you know, don't have their primary income. So relying on, you know, whatever they can get from, like, you know, Micaiah mentioned, trying to busk online when, you know, 15 years ago, artists can rely on royalties from, you know, higher royalties from radio and from record sales. That model is, you know, completely been decimated because of the streaming platforms.
I want to jump in, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do have to go because I have to attempt to do what Greg does professionally in about 20 minutes online. I'll just leave thank you. Great to see everybody. I just want to drop one piece of data into that conversation and see if it sparks even further uproar. Simple math, Apple's revenue is $600 million a month from streaming music. Great to see everybody. I'll leave you with that. Bye.
Thanks
for having me.
Thanks so much for being on. That was Louis Marks, everybody.
I think that's a big problem. I think that's a big problem that just needs to be addressed. That's not just around this current situation, but around the structure of the industry itself and where it's left people hanging, artists primarily at the bottom of the totem pole, hanging by a very thin thread, so that when now you can't go and make your however much money you do a night, a gig, little bits of money here and there just to try to stay alive, that when that's gone, you know, there's nothing left anymore, and that's a problem. It shouldn't have been like that from the beginning.
I have two questions on this. I made a post a few days ago with this chart saying how every streaming service pays their artists per stream. And for Spotify, that's 0.0028 cents per stream. Now, the thing is that now they have this donate button online per artist. And it's really strange because you as a consumer, you need to pay for your subscription, and then you can like support your artist. So it's all the consumer base, and it's not Spotify who thinks like, all right, you know what, let's just temporarily, for this COVID period, let's do the streams instead of 0.0028, let's go to 0.02, you know, or 0.1 for a change. And
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, of course, but you know, that's not what they're doing.
No, that's not what they're doing. The reason why is, and this is what I heard from Spotify Holland, is that Spotify is actually not making any profits at all. There is no buffer to up that pay per stream. I don't know if that is really the case, but
maybe the streaming model is not necessarily one that has been beneficial to the artists, or to the artistic community or the industry at all.
Exactly.
And even technology has moved into this, you know, leasing. You lease a program more or less. You know, you pay a subscription, right? And so that they can constantly take little bits of money for you to use Photoshop or Pro Tools or whatever. You know, this model works instead of having, good old fashioned product that, works until you have to buy another one, or you could even fix it, and use it for a longer period of time. But, the way that the technology sector has pushed all these issues is to make it so that they continually take money, and you can see that they're doing very well. They've made tons of money, and the disparity between them and the creators and content creators is really great. So they've been siphoning the value out of our work.
So why didn't we decide, Micaiah, to take off all your music from Spotify then?
Because we are participating in the larger model. But that's a good question, and so the thought process has been, right, in order to do well, I have to compete in the marketplace, right? And I want to have as many people access my work as possible, But I found, working with a small label, and not really focusing a lot of my energy on social media. I mean, if anybody's been paying attention, I haven't posted for maybe 6 weeks, and I probably have far less followers than people when I sell more records than, but selling records, like physical records that I have a better revenue share of, to a small amount of people who are dedicated fans, seems to work out better for me, than streaming so much to everybody, And so there's different ways, and that's also goes to thinking about localized artistic communities, and not only thinking about the global one. Support your local artists, support local businesses and local things. So I don't think the model always has to be that, but I think it is. Yeah, it's a dilemma, and a lot of things people, artists have to face that question. Should I have my music up streaming when I'm not going to get a lot of profit for it? Or maybe if I release something that's more exclusive, maybe there's more profit for me to be made in a way where I can actually survive off of selling my work.
We're talking about scarcity. That's something that has been decimated in the music world with the rise of streaming technology, the scarcity of actual recorded music. And that's why artists were able to make their living on it before, and now you can't make a living really on recorded music unless you're like in the multi-millions or billions of streams. And it's something that I think we can think about now as we move into the future, because digital is not scarce by its nature. It can be replicated infinitely. And how do we create things that are actually scarce, that people want to consume, that people will pay for, with the talent and the that we have in the music that we're creating. Records is one of those things. That's why it's been coming back more and more. That's why vinyls are getting more and more popular. It's an element you can hold in your hand that's scarce, and people are trading them on these little weird black markets, which is really cool. But there's got to be that with live streaming and with our presence now. My thought is, how do we create something that is scarce in a digital landscape?
Well, I think like the model that Patreon uses is very interesting nowadays. The fan to fan, direct fan to artist engagement. You can subscribe to your artist. The artist gives out exclusive content and exclusive stuff that is only allowed for their subscribers. The earning model for Patreon seems to be much more fair than any streaming service out there. Only taking I believe it's 8% of your total year revenue through Patreon. I don't know. I think that these kinds of things, creating the scarcity yourself, either through all these platforms, is a way to go. But then again, how do you get through the mass? To get
well. Artists are, and music is, I think we are great at creating community, until it comes to our ability to collectively bargain, and work together on issues, and so it is hard to create scarcity, or if everybody else is streaming things for free, and that's the culture. and it's been the culture, for several years now. It's not really unique to this moment.
It is May Day. It's the time to come together and unite. Support the laborers. That Music Workers Alliance I mentioned, I just forwarded you guys the petition. I would suggest sharing it if you can to your networks. It's very important, and it's very much speaking to exactly what we're talking about.
Where'd you forward it to? Because I'll share it in the chat here. I've got an automatic.
I just sent it on the email chain that you sent us.
Okay, I'll pull that up. Yeah, is that the one that Matt Mirowitz is working on? He was on the show the other day, and
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And Mark Ribot is one of the real organizers behind it.
yeah, the idea that the content distributors should pay out 1% of the is it gross advertising revenues or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's a model that was based on the original radio play compensation calculation to musicians.
Yeah, so 1% of the advertising revenues paid out to the people who actually created the content that they're distributing, which is like, it's almost, I mean, I know there's so many complexities in the business model, and it's not like, I mean, there are other expenses to running something like that. There's a cost for streaming a thing from one place to another. There's a cost for all the infrastructure, the personnel. But when you think about the fact that system, it's a little wild to me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna forward this link to the chat here. So the streaming entities that are connected to the chat, which I think is most of them, will see this way to get involved. Yeah.
I'm just so curious that, like, I know that here in on this side in Europe, different countries are taking different measures to keep artists basically alive with some form of basic income. For example, here in Holland, all freelancers and independents basically are allowed to apply for a fee of around €1,000, between 1,000 and 1,500 euros per month, just to keep afloat. And for Holland, I mean, all events and live shows and concerts have been banned until September 1. So probably these regulations will be extended up to September 1. I know that other countries have similar adjustments for. Is there something like this in the States, or is it really like, all right, guys, you guys figure it out and go private, as private funders or private commission funds, or is there a system of a basic income statewide somewhere?
There are bits and pieces of it. There are bits and pieces of it. There's I mean, everybody got $1,200 when this all started, and that was great and fine. But we also are going, I don't know how much you guys are going into debt, but we're approaching $4 trillion of debt for the country, and not a lot of that. I mean, the money has gone to sustain businesses and to sustain infrastructure, but the actual payouts to individuals, they've been there. I know some businesses that have gotten I think it's SBA loans or whatever that's called, but I mean, I don't qualify for that because I don't have people on payroll, including myself. Like, my income is very fractionated between a lot of different things. Like, I had income from touring in Makaya's band, for example, and I had income from like shows I was doing sometimes locally and different things I was participating in. But when it's that separated, it like, I personally did not qualify for the assistance that the government is offering to people, and I think the majority of artists that I've talked to don't seem to be getting anything from that in the U.S.
Yeah, it's a lot of hoops people are having to go through, whether it's the SBA loan, the PPP, or even just unemployment insurance, and even getting through to those systems. I've been following some chats from musicians and DJs trying to get unemployment insurance processed, and even just to get through on the phone lines, you fill it online, but then you have to be certified on the phone, and to get through it, people are calling and spending their entire day trying to get through. it's very daunting.
Yeah, there's not much of a safety net. I'm actually going to do a panel probably this coming week with the people from the organizations, the private organizations. Well, I mean, they're not technically private, but like the Louis Armstrong Foundation, for example, the non-government organizations that are giving grants to people, which ran out very quickly. And there's so much more need, obviously, than there is like.
Yeah, I've had some conversations with some of those entities, Jazz Foundation of America, also Jazz Roads, Southern Arts had a fund, like you said, Louis Armstrong, Chamber of Music America had a fund, and it's tremendous that they're all supporting artists in this way and offering relief, to artists in need specifically. It's however, sadly, it's a tenuous process of the artists applying. I understand some of the applications are very cut and clean and easy, but you still have to put in what your need is or what your income is. And again, hats off to them for supporting. One of the folks I spoke to said it's been they've been inundated, by the support requests, of course, naturally so. And it's wonderful they're doing it, but it's unfortunate that we have this model where artists are essentially, putting themselves in a place where they're playing, they're begging for this money or competing with fellow musicians for this money.
Well, it points out a flaw in the model. I think this is what Makai was speaking to earlier. It points out a flaw that's been present in our model for a long time as artists. It wasn't just during the COVID era, where the income that is generated for the creative output that is created is it's unproportional. It's disproportionate. And I've spoken about this to people. I've even spoken about this to investors, some of whom have invested in the music space, because they say that jazz artists specifically are the most undervalued asset in the world right now. Essentially, the level of work and creative output that is being utilized and monetized by companies that are distributing the content, and not only the companies that are distributing the content, other entities like, for example, the major pop entities that are employing jazz artists because they're the ones who can play the music, and then monetizing on that. The actual talent itself is the most undervalued asset that our society has right now. And my question is, how do we come together? And I can't think of anything other than a union, but I like free market solutions more than I like union solutions to things. They tend to like function more fluidly, but I don't know the solution to this one, and which is why we're holding these panels and brainstorming about it. But
the way our system works, it's getting support from representatives and passing legislation that's the laws of the land, and until then it's going to be entities, private or foundations, figuring out a model to augment the arts landscape. I'm happy to share right now what we're doing internally in the jazz industry, to just be another bright spot in the sky to support musicians. A few weeks ago, myself and a few colleagues got together and decided we wanted to in some way unite specifically the jazz community, and create this organization called Jazz Coalition, which is a membership-based organization. Of course, we will accept donations as well. But essentially, in a matter of just over a week of making personal appeals, we've raised close to $50,000 that we're then going to funnel through a commission fund to commission artists to create new work. So it's not a relief fund. It's we're trying to motivate artists, boost the morale, remind artists that they have value and worth, and to create a new piece of work that represents the time we're facing. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, we'll have this new canon of works that represents the resilience and help move us all forward. On early next week, we're going to open it up to a larger public campaign and try to raise another $50,000 to $100,000 that we're then going to distribute as commissions to artists in the jazz community. And it's international, so we're asking for members from all countries, nominations of artists from all countries, and the selection will be equitable on those lines as well.
Nice. Where can people go to find this?
jazzcoalition.org.
Okay.
And people can become members or donate right now. But again, early next week, we're going to spread it around more broadly on socials and ask all of our members. We're just about 150 members now. Mm-hmm. And so all of the members have agreed they're going to help support and spread the word. There'll be artist PSAs. Yeah,
that's great, because what the cats need is work.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that doesn't just mean gigs, you know, that could be writing commissions, that could be, you know, people take lessons, learn an instrument. You know, I started taking some guitar lessons. Labels should be, if they can, they fund new records, you know, like there's not, I think like this idea that we just have to replace the live experience with the streaming experience, you know, is not the only way that we can make some earning and use our skills during this time, you know. And I don't really, at least personally, and I don't knock anybody for doing what they're doing to make their money or whatever they need to do for their sanity, you know, but I feel like any performing over a streaming is going to be a diminished quality of my work, you know. But if I can spend the time creating, writing, hiring other cats to record on my projects, doing this and that, there's a lot of different ways that I can continue to work right now and buy myself the time to get through this period, you know, and things, you know, that are raising money to commission work and to pay musicians, you know, and also places like in the industry that have been taking the money and the value out of paying people for that work, you know, are very important right now and need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe this will serve as a catalyst for us to be a little bit more like the film industry in the way that we work together to manage how our creative output is used and monetized.
Well, they do have a very strong union.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Be more like the film industry. The union has the union in the film industry is great. Like the work that I've. Sorry, go on.
No. But this is exactly what I notice also on the European side of things. You know, it's very hard. It's very fragmented. You know, our world is very fragmented. The musician world is very fragmented. You know, it's not like musicians are coming together like one big community to voice something. You know, like if it's a unionization of the music arts, so to speak. But it's very much fragmented, and it needs to kind of like pull together. Like how the film, because you have actors unions, you have unions with publishers, you have it, you know, across the board. And somewhere, I don't know, I feel that within the live sector or within the live music sector, be it jazz, pop, electronic, I mean, you know, semantic bullshit, if you ask me. It's something like that needs to happen. And another thing what I wanted to touch base on, and that's what's been missing out of this conversation, is the role of publishers right now. I feel that publishing companies and publishers can actually facilitate a lot of work now for artists as we speak, because, you know, everything is going online, everything is going through a screen, or a lot of things are going through a screen. But, you know, commissioning work on syncs, you know, commercials, gaming, putting out music for you know, working with singer-songwriters, with bigger artists, so to speak. I think their role is quite pivotal to push for actually making change, even in a lobby towards YouTube, Spotify, or Apple.
Yeah, why aren't they going after those big companies?
What?
So why aren't they going after those companies?
I don't know. I don't know if they're going after them. I know that a lot of publishers are independent companies, as Spotify is, and they don't have deals like record labels do with Spotify, for example. I mean, and the pay per stream model is not based upon a relationship of Spotify or streaming service with a publisher, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I would feel and I would appeal to artists that do have publishing deals right now to get your publisher to work for you, you know, to get you these assignments where there's actually substantial passive income to be made this year.
Mm-hmm.
Or in a time like this.
Yeah, the publishing world is something that I know virtually nothing about. And I've been told by people that it's a landscape that has a lot of potential for creatives, but the majority of my income has not been via publishing, but it's one of those, it's kind of a black box for me, but it seems like a world that could at this moment in time, because so much value in our society is going to content that people are consuming at home, that would be a good sticking point of like seeing what the publishing world can do to help make things a little bit more equitable for artists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do know there are some statistics that I do know, like on Spotify, if you own the publishing on a song, you're going to get paid much less than if you own a master on the song. That's one of the big
mechanical rights.
Yeah, that's one of the big problems with people who are signed to major labels and don't own their masters, is they tend to not see the vast majority of the income from streaming in the first place, even when there is income. Whereas if you're from a small label like Makaya with International Anthem, for example, and I had a great conversation with Scotty the other day, where he's using this time to commission artists to do works and use the time that we can't tour, but if you're with a small label like that, or with like Rope-a-Dope Records, Lewis, who was on here earlier, it's a lot easier to make those bits of money that you can make through streaming because you do own your masters.
Yeah. I mean, there goes something. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than how you put it. I mean, obviously, you know, if you're signed with a major label, you don't own the masters. You know, the question of ownership of your masters or of your music, the intellectual property of it, is you can arrange for that freely. Mm-hmm. It also depends on the advance, for example, you get from a publisher or from a record label. Mm-hmm. That has to be recouped against a certain royalty percentage, you know, and that's, I mean, you know, let's just say you just finalized a good record deal right before this whole COVID thing, and you got a $25,000 advance, and if you did get that, you know, it's recoupable now, hardly any physical sales, but or maybe, I mean, I don't know what the stats are, but with an advance of $25,000, you're at least you're okay for this year, you know, for 2020 to kind of survive. Mm-hmm. And that's the same with publishing. You know, I mean, it's you get an advance, it should be recouped, but in the meanwhile, a certain percentage of your masters is not owned by you, but it can be used by the publisher to shop with brand association, to put it under commercials on TV, on internet, to access gaming industry and put your music under games and stuff like that. And that just means that every time somebody puts on PlayStation to play, I don't know, FIFA 2000 and your music is on, mm-hmm. you'll get paid. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, and that's a much more attractive model if you break down the math than for example, streaming services. Mm-hmm. But then again, you know, it's not an easy thing, but there's a lot of ways to think about, and that's not only, you know, doing educational work or commissioning work, to really think about for the musician to get passive income. You know, if you can get passive income for a month, I mean, that's the key.
Yeah.
And
it's an important thing to think about. We're 8 minutes past 9 o'clock, so I want to close this up pretty soon. But I want to get a couple closing thoughts from people, including Bryce. I'm really curious where you're at with thinking about Winter Jazz Fest and how you're going to be moving into the coming months and planning what the future looks like, even if it's vague.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's clear there's going to be some restrictions or lots of restrictions in terms of audience size, capacity, physical space. As Mike was saying, right now they're already talking about restrictions, but very specific date and spacing details in that. For us, we don't yet know what that's going to look like. I'm anticipating, yes, there will be restrictions, and there's certain venues that are just probably not going to survive and not going to reopen. There's other venues that are GA that to make it work, we'd have to bring in seats, maybe tables and chairs. But who's to say that those venues will give us the type of economic deal, rent deal, staffing cost deal that makes sense economically for us. So it's the Wild West right now. We're going to figure it out. I imagine we're going to have some sort of hybrid situation where it's a combination of a physical space where we're able to, physically distance, and some sort of virtual model. Maybe there'll be an exclusive ticket price to get into the physical space, but it also opens up an opportunity potentially of including venues outside of New York for both a physical experience and a virtual experience. Because if everything we're including, all the venues we're including, can be streamed in some way, and there's an audience in the room that is, adding to the give and take between the artist and the audience, then it's a much more live and dynamic experience. And we can really make this a global type event. I think that's one of the keys here that can set us apart from just a single camera, single shoot, single venue, is to have really high quality content from different spaces, different venues, different countries, and make it a large event. I mean, fortunately, we have what will be 17 years of legacy. So, we have an audience. It's easier for us to create that type of event because we have the following. But, we have to make sure priority is artists are compensated. So that has to be built into the model. We have to budget to make sure we can cover whatever operational costs we have. And, it's going to be easier if we can get some sponsorship support, if we can get some other outside funding. Otherwise, I'm wearing my promoter hat and just hoping that we're going to have the same type of, ticket buying revenue, whether it's physical or virtual.
Yeah. My sites keep pointing in that direction, and I'll just speak on it for just a moment, because there's so much revenue that has been there's money that was being paid to sponsor live events, and none of that's happening now. So that money needs to be paid towards advertisement for something, and I'm imagining right now it's going more towards Facebook ads and the different traditional forms of social media marketing that people are using. But there's such a big space here for brands to gain the love of people and notoriety within niche communities by associating more directly with artists and with creative endeavors like the Winter Jazz Fest. So it's my hope, and that's an idea. Maybe I'll even have a brand panel or something where we can bring on people who do spend money in factions of the industry like that, and see where is that money going, and how can we bring more towards something that eventually gets to the artists. Because even like going through Winter Jazz Fest, it would get to the artists, and it's also a landscape that we're looking at, the landscapes that are being crushed right now, like the clubs. I don't know how they're going to survive. And I was just contacted by one of the people from the Jazz Institute of Chicago yesterday, asking me to help with a fundraiser they're doing to try to keep the Jazz Showcase alive. And that's one of those things that's a giant question mark, but there is still money being spent on brands associating with audiences.
Just to jump into that, the director of Jazz Ahead, the biggest jazz conference showcase event, I think even in the world maybe, but at least we held in Bremen each year. Unfortunately, canceled this year. The whole jazz industry or improvised music industry comes together there, and it's a big fair. There are showcases, concerts, everything. Director of that is Uli Beckerhoff, and Uli Beckerhoff is a well-known German trumpet player. And especially in the 70s and 80s, he put out a lot of music, was a well-known cat. But he has a personal sponsor deal with Skoda, car company. Used to be Audi, but now he has one with Skoda, and they actually support him in his touring. They actually support him in recording records and in his artist expenses. I mean, I won't get into the details further, but it just comes to say that yes, I'm totally for that those venues need to be opened up because it's a new thing.
Yeah, that's there, and I've heard of bands being sponsored by major corporations like that in the past, and for the notoriety that the brand will get by being associated with that act while they're touring, and so they support the touring. So
and just to say for Bryce, I think it's also a very nice moment for arts to actually come together, because it's not just music; it's about performing arts. That are all going to be hit. So I think that it opens up a possibility and maybe a very solvable business model which can sustain a certain ecosystem where multiple disciplinary arts or immersive type experiences in which live music is combined with, I don't know, digital art or virtual art, where you can get revenues off of, just starting at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, ending at 11, and then just 10 people in for an experience of a half hour to an hour, and they pay, I don't know, 20 euros, 25 euros to get there. So per night you can actually make a good deal of revenue, which can support the whole ecosystem around it. And the thing with it is that you work with an artist that creates an experience where you try to give the people something of feeling and experiencing an emotion which you get of live music. I mean, that's it. The miss of the emotion and the electricity of it. So
yeah, that's the challenge.
If we entrepreneurs and musicians especially are creative enough, I'm pretty sure that there will be very nice changes.
Yeah, and as long as everyone understands that they need to value what they're doing and charge for it,
Yes.
it's there's so much out there right now that people are giving away, and people are willing to pay for it if it's good. And that's how we're going to rebuild the ecosystem. And if the artists are getting paid, quasi artist fees, then the representatives, the agents and the managers should start getting paid. So again, it's just another way to rebuild the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm thinking about in my own. Like I used to, when I was starting these live streams, I would do a lot of mornings where I was just playing and doing sort of concerts. But now I've been talking to a company called Ulule, which is Mike, you probably know about them, the European Kickstarter sort of thing that has a tool where there's a paywall, but then people can continue to pay to keep the live stream going for longer. And I'm gonna start experimenting with that for my actual performance live streams on piano, rather than just doing it as like an experiment for free as I've been doing. And I would encourage other artists to do that too. Find ways to actually have a paywall, promote your concerts like concerts, and try to have the highest production value you can. Makaya, do you have any closing thoughts before we log out of this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I just say that I think during a very tough circumstance, there are some unique opportunities to like reimagine the world, work on ourselves, work on our art, come together. To find creative solutions and build the new future. And so for that, I'm grateful for all of you guys and everybody. And I think that musicians are some of the most resilient people I know. And if anybody was built to be broken, have no gigs, we are.
We have all had
We
that
will
in our
survive,
history at some point, right?
what we have to
We're
offer
survivors.
is really important. So I remain optimistic, and I will continue to be working over here.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Micaiah. Thank you, Bryce Rosenblum, Mike Bindraban, Micaiah McCraven. For those of you who've just logged in at the near the latter half of this, Bryce Rosenblum is the founder of Winter Jazz Fest in New York. Mike Bindraban is the founder of Good Music Company, a great touring agency that has done many tours that I've been on. And Micaiah McCraven is a beat scientist, artist, one of my longtime hometown homies from Chicago.
And regular contributor to the morning show with Greg.
Yes, this is true. He is becoming a regular contributor, as Bryce and Mike have been on this before too. So I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate the conversation. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there because things are really tough for everybody right now, but there are rays of hope, and we are doing everything we can to uncover those rays of hope and look towards the future as what we can do to create the vision that will be the most ideal for the music community when we rebuild. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Greg.
And I will talk to you very soon.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks. Bye.
Later, bro.
All right, guys. All of my Mornings with Greg fans who are there, I'm going to come back to you on this closing screen here. You can see the chat again. I turned it off because people were... It's one of those things where... you only see the chats that are coming through my channel, but we're being rebroadcast on a lot of different channels, so I wanted to let everybody kind of converse in their own little unified channels. But I really appreciate Bryce and Louis Marks, also Mike Bindraban and Micaiah McCraven for joining me this morning. This is a morning show where we try to dig into what's going on right now and look at what we can do in the future, specifically from the mindset of the music industry. It's complicated and there's a lot of work to do, but we will survive. We are survivors in the music world. With that, I'm gonna actually say a couple things I'm gonna try to do in the future. So if actually people are watching who want to be involved in these, I'm gonna do a panel of radio that's being put together right now. I'm also doing a panel of sponsors, people from companies who do sponsor arts and artists. I think that's going to be one of the big things that helps artists survive during this time, is direct associations with brands, so that when we do live streams and we have an audience, that can be supported in a way that augments what people are willing to pay for those streams. And we also have to be careful not to give away too much of our general presence for free, which I'm obviously doing a great job of right now, being live every morning. But you will be able to catch me on Ulule. I'll post on my Facebook pages, so if you look me up on Facebook, Greg Spiro, you'll see the actual concerts that I'm doing, where I'll play some piano for you. And I'll do one of those in the next few days. So watch me as I work through this, and watch your colleagues, and let's all keep our heads up in this time, because it will get easier as we start lifting some restrictions. But most importantly, let's think as much as we can and dialogue as much as we can during this period of time, so that when we come out of this, we can come out of it stronger than we've been in the past, and fix some of the problems that have plagued the music world for a long time now. Thank you very much, guys. This has been Mornings with me, and I'm Greg. Hope you enjoyed. Oh, we're gonna get you some music in a second here. By the way, this is a track from the Chicago Experiment that I'm going to close you out with, featuring Micaiah McCraven, who you just saw, also Joel Ross, Jeff Parker, Daryl Jones, and Marquise Hill and Irvin Pierce. So hope you enjoy. See you guys tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Bye.